Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. Jason, what's the deal with Scott Mendelson's abs still showing at such a high body fat? Are they just disproportionately big? Is it an extreme kind of bloating? Combination of all of those things. And what you need to remember, you take someone like Scott Mendelson. I wouldn't even claim to know what a guy who breaks a bench press or raw bench press world records drug stack looks like, right? You're talking about guys who are benching 700 plus pounds raw with a pause, right? Not even bouncing. We're talking a pause bench with no bench shirt, right? His drug stack is probably ridiculous. Probably ridiculous. Who knows what all the hell he's taken? What do we know? A lot of drugs that people take out there that they abuse, particularly a lot of the insulin, IGF-1 type things, some oral anabolics, cause large amounts of visceral fat. That's fat around your organs. That's not going to be under your skin, right? Different people have different fat distributions. You look at someone like him. Now, some of those he's fatter than in others, right? He clearly is fatter and leaner in different points. But someone who has a fairly low subcutaneous fat is going to have visible abs, right? Less fat under your skin, but you're carrying a large amount, pounds and pounds of it around your organs. It's going to cause that distended stomach, all right? Then you have to factor in bloat, all right? Bloat, maybe he diets down fairly leaner there because he's on a lot of drugs or something, so he starts burning body fat inherently, getting ready for that meet where he tore the pec, right? Could be a factor. Then whatever he eats after weigh-in, carbs up, eats handfuls of anadrol, whatever else, causes further gastrointestinal bloating, thus pushing his abdominals further out, right? But in that one on the far left, he's actually not that fat. He's not really fat by normal standards. He does have very well-developed core, and he does have probably a fair amount of visceral fat in there, though, and that's what we need to be concerned about. From a health perspective, that visceral fat is really your biggest enemy. That's your biggest enemy, and that's one of the concerns with some of the drug abuse out there. So I'm going to suggest that a lot of that is drug-related, and a lot of it's going to be the fact that the guy probably does have a really massive core on top of all that fat that's around his organs, right? Because he's brutally strong. So you know he's got tremendous core and abdominal development. So the answer is multifold in nature, right? Obviously. All right, next question. Hey Jason, what are your thoughts on apparatuses such as hammer strength, T-bar, row, V-squat, and various chest presses that require plate loading? Can they give you extra volume as accessory movements, or are they inefficient as regular machines in the gym? You know, this is going to be a point of massive contention. It's going to be a point of massive contention. I don't like machines. I'm going to be straightforward. I think machines are generally inferior to free weights for a whole host of reasons. I also think that when you become reliant upon a certain machine, people then struggle when they have to go train anywhere that doesn't have that machine, right? And they're a pain in the ass to set up in your home gym. They're a big waste of gym space. And from a practicality perspective, because of all of that, I just don't like them. Now, that being said, I will be the first to admit that tension is still tension. And for an accessory movement, not a primary movement, but some sort of accessory movement for a weak point that needs extra work. I'm not going to say that machines can't play a valuable role there if you choose to use that, because they can still work. I mean, again, fatigue is fatigue, tension is tension. Extra stress applied to a lagging area with extra volume near the end of a workout still has a training effect and a hypertrophic effect as long as progressive overload is there. But I want to add the caveat that there are no advantages to using these machines either. Right? There's no advantage to using the machine. There's no benefit you get out of that back-supported, whatever, vertical pull-down row machine that you couldn't just get doing some pull-ups. Other than guys say, well, I'm not strong enough to do pull-ups at the end of a workout. Okay, we'll do a reverse band pull-up. Meaning I don't think they bring anything to the table. Not saying that they can't work, because tension is still tension at the end of the day. And maybe people get to a certain point in their training where they have a lagging area that they just needs extra work. I get it. I get it. And I'm not saying it won't even create hypertrophy in those situations. I just don't think they're the best tools for the job. And I think even in those situations, they don't bring anything special to the table that a free resistance with body weight or with a barbell or anything else doesn't really have. Machines don't bring anything special to the table. They really don't. And that's my opinion on it, all right? Take it or leave it. All right, next question. Jason, are multiple sets really needed? Like if I just go and hit a 1 rep max and hit all the upper threshold fibers, then why do it again? Just looking for a scientific breakdown, I suppose. A lot of factors. Total workload matters for hypertrophy. All right, I want to make that very clear. Total volume and workload matter for hypertrophy. In other words, even taking a set to failure doesn't get you the same benefit that multiple sets would, stopping a rep short of failure. Let's say you did a 10 rep max all the way to failure, right? Versus doing the exact same exercise with 3 sets of 8 to 9 reps instead of 10 rep being a failure rep, right? Let's say you couldn't do the 10th rep, so it's 9 reps to failure. You're going to actually see more muscle growth doing the 3 sets of 8, none of which go to failure. It is going to produce slightly more muscle growth when we look at it in studies. And it's going to be a measurable amount. It's going to be something like 20% more muscle mass over time. All right. Total workload matters. Even when you're stopping a rep or 2 short of failure, those extra sets actually still tend to give you more extra muscle growth than even taking that 1 set to failure does. Same thing, we come over to even hitting a 1 rep max, you're only getting 1 practice rep. That's not good for skill learning. The same thing, even if we take the 3 sets of 8 versus 1 set of 10, with the 10th rep being a failure rep, right? You get more first reps with the 3 sets of 8. Not only do you get more hypertrophy, you get more practice on a first rep. Your max is going to go up more. I would argue that realistically, if your goal is to get as strong as possible, even on a 1 rep max, if you don't want to do real volume work, you need to do a lot of first reps. You need to do a lot of singles then. Now you can peak and do like a daily one like I was doing with Bulgarian, but even that has a threshold to where you're going to stop stimulating hypertrophy. It gets very hard. You're going to need extra accessory work. In other words, training volume matters. And training practice matters as well. All right? Practice matters as well. If you want to get good at hitting a 1 rep max, you better be hitting a lot of heavy first reps. Whether that's doing low rep sets for dynamic work or practice or 10 sets of 3 or a lot of singles, you still need that practice to get good at singles, even if you want to hit maximum strength. Like, this stuff matters. It matters for hypertrophy. It matters for maximum strength. There's no way around it, and the data shows it. And you need that extra stress to cause the tissue disruption to cause prolonged growth. I'm not saying you can't grow off of a single set. I'm not saying you can't grow off of hitting maxes. But there is a certain training volume that is necessary to stimulate good amounts of muscle growth, and there's even more required to hit maximum amounts of muscle growth. That's just the reality of it. All right, next question. Do you believe the need to rotate exercises every 3 weeks as prescribed by people like alphadestiny? You mean 3-week waves as far as you need an adjustment every 3 weeks? Yeah, something has to increase every 3 weeks. Now, I don't know what Strap-On prescribes per se, but I know that he gets a lot of his info from Louis Simmons, who I am very well read on, and I've heard many, many lectures by Louis Simmons, and I've read pretty much everything Louis has written. What he's talking about is the law of accommodation, meaning your body will continue to adapt from a repeat bout effect every time you repeat the exact same training stress. So if you don't increase the stress or adjust the stress in some way every 3 weeks, you will stagnate. So when you're talking about things like the dynamic work or the repetition type method, you have to change something every 3 weeks, whether it's you add reps, you add weight, you make some adjustment to the technique. It's a requirement. You'll stop growing. You'll stop adapting after that. Now, if you're talking about stuff like hitting maxes, again, unless everything is perfect, what Louis always claims is that you will stagnate if you hit the same max 3 weeks in a row. If you hit the exact same exercise on the 3rd week, you will stagnate and regress. So on something like if you just hit a max true back squat, for example, 3 weeks in a row, you'll start regressing at the 3rd week. if you're doing purely the max effort stuff, and that's been his experience. So that also follows the 3-week progression thing. However, even that stuff, I even adjust my max effort stuff for that. But keep in mind, minor variations in the lifts are all you need. Something like if you're going to do deficit deadlifts, change it by 1 inch every week. Done. Problem solved. You bypass the law of accommodations. Adjust your bench grip a couple inches every week. Problem solved. You bypass it. So it isn't as big of a deal as people make it out to be. That is a change in the lift. Changing your bench grip. Right? Changing the height of the plate that you stand on for a deficit pull. Done. Novices do not need to worry about this stuff, by the way. This only applies to intermediate and advanced lifters. That point needs to be made very, very clear. Novices changing stuff like that will actually cause themselves to make slower gains. All right, next question.